Futures trading involves risk and is not suitable for all investors. Content provided in this segment is meant for educational purposes and is not a solicitation to buy or sell commodities.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Grain Feed, brought to you by EverAct. This is your weekly news feed for all things grain and all things feed. Each week, we bring you updates on the markets with unique perspectives from an amazing team of analysts with the intention of helping dairy and livestock producers manage their risk. I'm your host, Jim Matthews, reporting from Chicago on a lovely autumn Thursday morning. Joining me today, as always, from Kansas, Director of Feed Procurement, Mr. Jake Kingsley. And making his first appearance on the Grain Feed from California, Dairy Market Advisor, Mr. Ryan Boschma. Team, how are we today?
Very well this morning, Jim.
Doing good, Jim.
Excellent. Dude, Ryan, great to have you on. Thank you for joining us.
Great to be here.
That's nice of you to say. How is everything way out west, California?
Things are doing good. The weather is cooling down out here in California after a long hot spell going into October.
Okay. And just for Midwestern viewers and listeners, a cooling down is like below 100?
Below 100. Yeah, we're talking about like low 70s, I think even high 60s in this next week coming up.
You're going to get 60s overnight?
I think this is the high of 60, if I remember correctly, here in the great Central Valley.
Oh, fantastic. So you're busting out the parka. You're going crazy.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be real cold. Yeah. It's getting real cold.
Excellent. And Jake, you're down in Kansas, no Wichita. You're not wearing your jacket today. How are things there?
We're doing all right. I think we're in the low 80s for a high. We dropped down into the 50s for a low. We've had a pretty lengthy fall period here. It's nice. I'm liking it.
A lengthy fall period. That sounds nice. Should be on the Kansas Tourism Board, one of their mottos or something. We'll work on that. For the time being, we got a lot to hear from Ryan out in California. But first, Paige, if you'd kindly timestamp the broadcast, it is 10:10 Chicago time, Thursday morning. We're looking at the markets here today. We're unchanged for corn for end users here. That's a pleasant change of pace because the market has been on a fairly steady rally as of late. So markets are pulling back just slightly on corn. Maybe a little bit of help from some of our other feed markets this morning because we have December meal, that stubborn little byproduct, is down about $4.50 to $5 here this morning. We've got D's meal approaching $3.10. So this is about as close as we brought this market back towards 300 here in a bit. So again, maybe having a little bit of influence on old December corn, which is back down to just $4.20 this morning, but still a good maybe 20 cents or so off the lows from what we saw about a week ago. So market has a lot to digest here in the coming weeks, and we'll review that with Mr. Jake Kingsley as well. But first, Mr. Ryan Boschma, what's been happening in the dairy markets lately?
Dairy markets in the futures are looking pretty good. We did have a little spook in the milk production report on Monday that brought markets down a little bit lower. That came as a shock, seeing that the U.S. milk production was up 0.1%, and August was revised up to 0.4%. So with all the headwinds that dairy producers are facing when it comes to bird flu and lack of heifer inventories, the U.S. dairy farmer is pretty resilient in actually cranking out positive milk production report in the midst of bird flu in California.
Okay, excellent. I know you threw in markets were spooked. Is that a Halloween reference?
That is a Halloween reference.
Yeah.
I saved that for this. This one right
now. We're getting in the spirit of things already. That's fantastic. We're a week away. It's hard to believe. And so you mentioned some of the numbers that came out on Monday. I think that revision was probably very helpful in terms of market pricing, let's say impactful in terms of some market pricing as of late. For the most part, right, when we're talking about the dairies in your neck of the woods, but really across the country, it's feed pricing too that has been extremely helpful for the dairies lately. So, the milk production has had some temporary movement in the milk market, but feed has remained under some pressure as well. How are margins looking here for the average dairyman?
I would say margins look great for 2025. It's something for dairy producers to take advantage of. The first half of 2025, dairy products are in the 90th percentile, class 3, class 4. And then when you look at grains, I'm sure you guys can speak to it, but yeah, we're in low percentiles there.
Oh yeah. We love seeing, again, corn has been on a little bit of a recovery. back from where it was, but we have to keep in mind that we have been at a 4-year low back in August, and we're maybe a 30 some odd cents above that as we trade at the moment. But the grand scheme of things has remained under pressure. And Ryan, we are finally also feeding this cheap feed, right? Which I think has been really important, because as we've been talking to folks about the feed markets all through the summer and into the fall, it's been this talk of board pricing, basis coming in, what you'll start feeding October forward, achieving these lows in August. That's nice on paper, but we're still feeding the stuff from a year ago. That's including even last summer's silage, you name it. We're finally starting to feed the cheap stuff. So it's nice to see maybe that start to work its way in. Are folks feeling a bit more optimistic as we're heading into the end of 24 and getting into 25?
Yes, I think dairy producers are very optimistic, especially out here in California amidst the bird flu. I think the bird flu is the big driver of it right now, seeing their production kind of drop amongst their infections on farm. Talking about diving into the new crop feed, yes, that's definitely going to help out margins as well. And maybe, feed a higher octane ration to these cows with these cheaper feeds to drive that milk production even more, which might actually speed up the rebound from the impact of bird flu in California.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, it's going to take some time, obviously, to digest the full impact there. But as you are living right in the heart of it there and have friends and family dealing with it, obviously we're thinking of them and are hoping to support them the best we can, because their plates are full at the moment. But in the grand scheme of things, maybe a potential impact on production will be reflected maybe in the upcoming production report. So we'll see how spooky those reports might get as we move on down the road here. Jake Kingsley, we're talking a lot about California. Ryan's talking about the margins that are coming down the pike here. I mean, again, we are finally beginning to feed some of that cheaper feed. It's that time of year. We're rolling through harvest. We are well more than halfway done on both corn and beans at this stage. Again, futures pricing on corn has been elevated a bit lately compared to the lows we've had. But overall, this market has remained largely under pressure. We're seeing protein absolutely under a fresh round of pressure today. What are you seeing in the physical feed markets?
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about it last week, and it's continuing again here as we get into the home stretch on harvest, specifically in California and the Western U.S. destination markets, these rail-dependent regions. Corn basis is feeling some pressure, even as futures have perked up a little bit. We're starting to see that breakdown in corn basis out there. There may be a little more room yet to go, but we have had folks starting to step in and do a little bit of purchasing. If they're not making a transaction today, they're putting in some firm bids with their vendors to get something on the books as this thing starts to move in our favor. Protein, getting some help on the futures side there. Canola basis has softened up and is a lot closer to what would be normal in those areas. We're seeing soybean meal remain a little bit firm, and I think maybe the way that this thing's shaping up, we'll see some folks reverse a little bit of what they did last year, where they went from canola more heavily into soybean meal, and now the market looks like it's trying to drive them back the other direction, feed a little bit more canola out in that part of the world, and that's okay. I think the opportunity's there. We can manage that well. So those are some things we've been looking at this week. Of course, you said it, we are well over halfway through harvest. By the time we get our next set of data on Monday, it would not surprise me to see both corn and soybeans near or past the 80% harvested mark across the U.S. You get to those types of numbers and you start to really wind down on spot bushels hitting the market and putting a lot of downward pressure on basis. So the opportunity is there now. I think we need to be taking advantage of that. I don't think we need to be overwhelmingly worried about a big run back higher in cash values, especially on the basis side of things, with as big of crops as we've got and as healthy as these balance sheets look, both domestically and globally. But it wouldn't shock me over the next week or so to see things perk up a little bit as the bin doors get closed up, and then you have to start to bid this stuff back into the pipeline, and basis is the most flexible tool to make that happen. So taking some opportunity while it's here in front of us, and then kind of watch. We've got just a couple of weeks here until the election. Not sure how that's going to change things. That'll definitely change the landscape in the macroeconomic picture. We've been getting a lot of questions the last week or so about, okay, if scenario A or B plays out, how does that affect trade relations? How does that affect our feed values? And our crystal ball is not sharp enough to paint that whole picture, which is why we're saying take some risk off the table while we're here, right? And then the next things you're watching is continue to monitor geopolitical tensions globally. We saw that perk up crude values, which a lot of commodities followed that this week. And then, of course, South American weather as that plays out over the next handful of months. I think those are the three big factors that are going to be influencing this market over the next few weeks and months. So taking advantage of some opportunity while it's here. I think there will potentially be some more opportunity as we move closer to and into 2025. So,
and Jake, it's not just us, right, that are talking about taking an opportunity at these levels and getting ahead of some of this potential volatility. We're seeing the global market, right, the foreign end users stepping in a big way, buying U.S. corn and beans. I mean, this has been a couple weeks now of some heavily ramped up purchases. The Chinese buying a lot of beans, but also some corn. We're seeing Mexico continue to ramp up corn purchases. I mean, the foreign market is looking at futures down near these 4-year lows, as we've been saying. So margins for them look pretty good too. But as you noted, Jake, we're getting ahead of some of these maybe additional political tensions here in the U.S. because, yeah, we are now less than 2 weeks out from the election. We have no idea how that's going to play out for both the White House and or either chamber of Congress and what that does, potential trade impacts. One could argue that a lot of the purchases we've seen are, yes, take advantage of that pricing, but maybe also it's almost their way of hedging a purchase ahead of this election, ahead of whoever's inauguration and who ends up taking Congress in terms of which party potentially having majority or full control in just a few months' time. So there's a lot of opportunities there, and folks around the globe are taking advantage of it. Jake, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but in terms of the switch in rations, bean meal to canola, what does that look like for folks in terms of like your protein content within that feed, and also maybe any other, I don't know, additions to the ration that they have to make in order to make that switch?
Specifically at California, right? Folks that are moving from soy into canola. Canola only has about 3/4 of the protein content of soy. It varies a little bit depending on source, and canola is getting better and better at including higher protein, but you could call it 75% protein content of soybean meal. And so canola is priced at less than 75% the value of soy, or very close to it out there. So it makes sense to make that change. I know a lot of nutritionists like the amino acid content and some of the fiber content in canola, and so you can displace a few other ingredients or improve your milk quality, that sort of thing. So we by no means try to step in and make that call for folks, but it is something to start to discuss with your nutrition team, see if it makes sense to start to plug some things in there.
Gotcha. Very good. And then, Jake, obviously everyone's wondering which one tastes better, bean meal or canola meal? Preference here? Are you biased based on taste?
I think it's probably a texture thing. A lot of canola comes pelletized versus meal is virtually all still a loose meal. So probably tastes fairly similar.
Okay.
I guess it depends on your preference if you want to use a fork or a spoon.
Oh, really? Okay. Gotcha. So one's maybe more like a cereal type of situation, right? I got you. Very good. Well, we really appreciate those insights. And folks, when you hire Everag and the Feed Foundations team, that's the type of stuff you get right there. We break down even the taste of canola versus bean meal. And Jake, if you could just give the audience another one of those quick pivots, swivel in your chair. We're talking about Halloween coming up. We mentioned some certain reports getting spooky. There's a lot of spooky stuff happening right there in Wichita. So you've given us a quick preview of what we maybe have to deal with next week, and maybe even for you, Jake, forever. You might have to deal with that forever. That feels like a curse, potentially.
To be determined. We'll find out next week.
I guess it depends who is doing the cursing, I guess. Okay, folks, excellent work today. A huge, huge thank you to Ryan Boschma for joining the show. Ryan, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks again for having me.
Am I pronouncing Boschma? Is that more of a Chicago Boschma versus a California?
That is a unique Boschma that you're saying, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely Chicago accent there. So I like it, though.
Okay, gotcha. All right, cool. So just for the viewers and listeners, my Boschma is not exactly how you would approach Ryan's last name. But thanks for being on with us. We really appreciate it. We'd also like to thank Corey and the Everag Insights crew for their support. Thank you to Paige and Lexi for their production magic. And thank you to the viewers for watching the Grain Feed. Contact information is on the screen. We greatly appreciate your feedback. That's all for today. We'll see you next time on the Spooky Grain Feed.